Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Gentlemen, thank you. I especially want to thank your families who truly bear the burden of your service. You love what you do, I know, but they truly have to bear the burden. It's a team effort. So I think broadly what the National Defense Strategy is trying to do, and it's a tough one, is how do we deal with a metastasizing Islamic extremist threat, peer competitors, rogue states, Iran, North Korea, overlaid with 22 trillion in debt. And what strikes me about your AOR is that it really is the cross-section. It's really the confluence of China's One Belt, One Road, of Russia's Middle East, a push into the Middle East, of Iran's hegemony, and of course the heart of the extremist threat. In reading your written testimony, what concerns me a bit when I want to ask you about, specifically as it comes to a couple of the theaters, is just kind of language in there of shifting to being a supporting command, of doing more with less, of doing with less resources, particularly in the AFRICOM AOR. And while of course we do, and this committee needs to help you invest in those near peer or peer, I'd say now, adversaries, I'm very worried of the pendulum swinging too far and taking our eye off the ball on this extremist threat that is maybe on its back foot, but is absolutely not defeated. In looking at your testimony to the Senate, I think you agree that ISIS and Al-Qaeda, ISIS in particular, may be defeated as a caliphate, but not as a movement. In fact, I'd argue, and tell me if you disagree, that movement is growing and metastasizing, particularly across North Africa, and absolutely can return to threaten the United States again. So looking at Afghanistan in particular, with half the world's terrorist organizations emanate, where the 9/11 attacks emanate, and reading recent reporting of a withdrawal based on a 5-year timeline as part of General Miller and Saud Khalilzad's negotiations, I feel like I'm getting transported back to 2009 with President Obama announcing withdrawal timelines. Do you, General Votel, think timelines as part of our strategy is a good idea? And have you been consulted on that timeline? Is that your best military advice?
I think, in Congressman, I think most of us would say that these decisions have to be based more on conditions and on specific times. But I am certainly aware of the ongoing discussions here, and have provided my advice. My advice is that any decision to reduce forces in Afghanistan should be done in full consultation with our coalition partners and, of course, the government of Afghanistan. It should pivot off political progress and the reconciliation.
Do the conditions on the ground now merit a withdrawal? And that's both a question for you and for you, Ms. Wilbur.
Congressman, we've not been directed to withdrawing. There are no orders to withdraw anything.
But in your advice do the conditions merit a withdrawal, a reduction of forces, but whether it's the conditions of the Afghan army, which I would think we would agree is not ready to stand on its own, or the battlefield conditions from a CT perspective?
Well, it certainly is a function of the conditions on the ground, but it is also a function of the conditions in the political process as well. And so, as I indicated, as I talked about, my best military advice is that we should make decisions based on the political progress.
I'm sorry, General. Just in the interest of time, do the conditions now merit a withdrawal in your advice on 4 years at CENTCOM on your way out?
The political conditions and where we are in the reconciliation right now don't merit that.
Okay. General Waldhauser, I only have a few minutes. If I could ask you for the record to submit where we are on an American citizen, Jeff Woodkey, held hostage in Mali, what assets are being dedicated to find him. I think we owe the families that and all American citizens that, where we are. If you could submit that for the record, it would be great. I understand with optimization, you're shifting to a 25% withdrawal in a theater that was already an economy of force, where again, the Chinese and Russians are increasingly involved and we have a growing extremist threat. What are you not able to do with that reduction? What risk are we taking?
First of all, Congressman, on the Woodkey issue, I will submit that, and we can talk about it in closed session.
Thank you.
Secondly, with regards to optimization, I know we just have a few seconds left to go here, but I just want to emphasize the fact that optimization on the African continent has to do with counterterrorism strategy only. It's a very small niche. And what we've been directed to do and what we've said we will do are two different things. And moreover, we've been directed to do a cut for the first optimization or adjustment or cut for the first 18 months, which takes us out to June of 2020. And I think the number the Pentagon has used was about 10%. So it's difficult to get into numbers because they move around all the time. But if you say that there's 6,000 military people on the continent today, then that number is roughly close. But in the next 18 months, we'll optimize some conventional forces and some special operations forces, primarily in areas where their work is pretty much done, where they have...
I'm sorry, the gentleman's time has expired. If you then summarize, we'll move on to Mr. Golden.
Thank you.